Hey everyone, Giorgio Medranda here at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. I'll be going over the structural late-breaking clinical trials presented at CRT 2022. First up is the first-in-man data on the Cerclage device. The first-in-man trial evaluated the safety and feasibility of the novel transcatheter mitral Cerclage ventriculoplasty device used to treat high-risk patients with functional MR. The data was presented by Dr. Toby Rogers of the NIH and MedStar Washington Hospital Center. He presented data on the first 19 patients enrolled in the trial. Their primary endpoint was technical success measured at exit from the cath lab and was achieved in 17 out of 19 patients. Importantly, there were no procedural deaths, strokes, or other major adverse cardiovascular events. For those who did receive the device, MR was improved upfront and sustained with improvements in regurgitant volume and EROA out to 1 year. This translated to improvements in New York Heart Association functional class, as well as 6-minute walk distance and KCCQ scores. So very important early data using this novel device to fill an unmet clinical need. We look forward to additional data in the future. Next up is the 4-year data from the LRT trial. This data was presented by Dr. Ron Waxman of MedStar Washington Hospital Center and the course chair of CRT. As we know, the LRT trial was the first US FDA-approved IDE-exempt trial to evaluate the safety and feasibility of TAVR in low-risk patients. The trial enrolled 200 patients with low-risk symptomatic severe tricuspid aortic stenosis at 11 centers in the United States. The mean age was 74 years and 61% of patients were male. Now, at 4-year follow-up, 174 patients were evaluated. The all-cause mortality rate was 12.1%. The all-cause stroke rate was 7.9%, with only 2% being disabling, and permanent pacemaker implantation rate was 12.3%. Now, of note, 4 subjects did require surgical reintervention for endocarditis. On 30-day CT for all subjects enrolled, there was evidence of hypoattenuated leaflet thickening in 14% of patients. However, this did not seem to affect hemodynamics or valve durability out to 4 years, which is encouraging. So Dr. Waxman concluded that the LRT trial demonstrated excellent outcomes at 4 years, including low rates of mortality and stroke, and that the excellent hemodynamics were maintained. So very important data as we wait and see what the other trials show. Next up is data from the SURPASS study. The SURPASS study was a large registry analysis of the real-world observational use of the Watchman Flex device. This data was presented by Samir Kapadia of the Cleveland Clinic. In this study, there were 16,000 patients, which they queried from the NCDR. Successful implantation, defined as device success release and deployment, occurred in 98% of patients. Noteworthy that only 0.37% of patients, which is about 60% of patients, hit that safety endpoint of either death, ischemic stroke, or requiring reintervention. At 45-day follow-up, only 3.55% of patients had major bleeding, only 0.91% of patients suffered death, and only 54 patients, 0.38% of patients suffered stroke. Additionally, left atrial appendage closure assessment at 45 days on echo demonstrated that 82% had no leak. So very important real-world data from a large registry using the new Watchman Flex. And then finally, we'll go over data from the NIH multi-center trial registry looking at transcaval access versus transaxillary access as an alternative access in TAVR. This data was presented by Robert Letterman of the NIH. This data is from 8 centers, experienced centers across the United States, using TVT registry data between 2017 and 2020. They found that in-hospital stroke and TIA were more common after transaxillary TAVR, 13.2%, than in transcaval TAVR, which was just 2.5%. And the same was true at 30 days, 13.2 versus 2.9. Additionally, major or life-threatening bleeding was about the same. It was comparable between the two, transaxillary being 13.2% and transcaval being 10.1%. And all of these rates were higher with the alternative access obviously as compared to the transfemoral approach, which is more traditional and obviously preferred. So this is also very important data as we search for the ideal alternative access for patients whose iliofemoral anatomy is less favorable. So thank you for listening and watching. You can see a lot of this data on CRT Online and CRT 2022. Thank you.
German.com